All right, there we go. So welcome to Monday, November 7th. The first thing I'd like to do is to go over this email I sent this morning. I'm going to do it by going over the first part and then the second part. All right. So today we are going to cover chapter 18, which is link from the Murach text. We're going to cover that probably starting in about 10 or 15 minutes. Tomorrow we're going to do a link project. I'm going to send you some starter material for that, but that for the homework for chapters 17 and 18, I'm not going to test you, but I would like you to do the written test for chapter 17, and that's the only thing I'll require from chapter 17. And for chapter 18, I'd like you to do the written test and this link song list project that we'll do together as a class tomorrow. All right, and I'll go over that again tomorrow as well. All right, so today, like I said, I'm going to lecture on link, and I've actually got a repo out there that I'll allude to later that's got some examples on there that may help you understand this. All right, tomorrow, like I said, we'll go over this link project, which you will be required to do as part of your lab work. Wednesday, we're going to start and go over chapter 19. So we're going to begin going over databases. All right. Today is day 55. So really after today, we've got 5 weeks. All right. We've got 25 more days. So Wednesday, we'll go over chapter 19, which is databases in the Murach text. Thursday, we're going to go over some databases in detail. There won't be a lab day this week. All right. And sorry about that, but it's being done for various reasons. There is no class on Friday this week. Rankin always closes in honor of Veterans Day. So again, what we'll be due for homework for chapters 17 and 18 are what's shown right there. I don't want to sit and read to you. All right. The other thing, and I sent you this out this morning, but I'm going to go over it right now, and that is every semester here at Rankin, you are to do an electronic portfolio. Now, last Saturday, we had the Rankin open house. I was there from 7 until 12, and we had people come in pretty much between 9 and 12. All right. And one of the things I was trying to impress upon the people who came here, the potential future students, was the fact that today, really, hiring managers, HR people, IT managers, etc., they don't want to see an 8.5 by 11 piece of white paper with black writing on it that represents your resume. All right, they need to see examples of your work before you can get hired. All right. So that's what you are to do. Now, before I go over this, and I will, nice and slow, but I want to show you an example of one that's out there that you could all use. And it's not that you have to use this one as a template, but sometimes people say, well, what are you looking for? One of my second year students, James Wharton, who will graduate in December, you can go out there, and if you go out to iwt.rankin.edu/J Wharton portfolio. Now, you may not be able to, that, oops, well, what happened there? Try that again. I can show you errands too. There's 2 of them I got out there that you can take a look at. All right, so this is James's. And like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to very quickly put up on here. I will add these to your email later this afternoon. All right. Let me just move this. We'll put it here. And there'll be another one, and it'll be errands. All right, and again, I will add those later today. So what are we looking to have you do? Well, this is going to be a living document. And what I mean by that is you will change it over your tenure here at Rankin. Now, will yours look as good as his, etc.? I'm going to show you how you can make his and literally make it in about 5 minutes. All right.
Professor,
Yes.
we're not seeing any screen share right now.
All right. Let me double check then. All right, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is James's. And again, James is a second year student. He will graduate in December. And I'll keep it short and sweet, but an interesting story about James, and maybe I told you guys this already, I don't remember, but at the beginning of May, he emailed me and said, hey, on a whim, I applied for this job as a programmer for this aerospace company that's out in O'Fallon called Sayer Industries. And he said, just in case I even get an interview, he said, I don't think I will, but could you write me a letter of recommendation? I said, of course I would. He's a 4.0 student. He's been a tutor, etc. So he's just a very good guy. So I did. A week went by, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I didn't hear anything. So I figured he probably didn't even get the interview. But I thought just for the heck of it, I'd email him. So I emailed him and he's like, believe it or not only did I get the interview, I got the job. All right. And so the point is, I'm not saying that he got the job because of this thing right here, but it doesn't hurt. All right, so you can set it up so it's all on one page like this, or you can have different pages. And again, if you go, I don't even have any idea how to do this, I'm going to show you free software that you can download that'll help you with it. All right, so this is his. Again, if you go to portfolio, there's examples of some of his work. What did he do here? He literally went out, and these go out to his GitHub repositories. All right, and he took screenshots of some of the stuff that he's worked on. All right. He put his resume out here, and you can actually download it as well. All right. And he's got some contact information. All right. So what does this have to do with everything? Well, today I sent you this. And the day before the semester ends, so the 14th of December, which is literally like about 5 weeks away, all right, you will have to turn in an electronic portfolio. Now, I'm not going to read a word of this to you. All right. What I'm going to do right now, and I'm going to create another tape on this later, either later today or tomorrow, but I'm going to create a separate tape on how you can use this free product to basically do some dragging and dropping and create this thing for yourselves. All right. After you do that, you must make sure, and I'll make another video that shows you how to do this. There's a special part of GitHub where you can actually go and put websites. All right. So I will show you how to do that. So you will create this thing using some built-in software and push it out to GitHub pages. And you'll either have separate pages for a home page, an about you page, a resume page, a portfolio page, etc. Or like James has that I just showed you, you'll have it all on one page. All right. Now it says your project must be evaluated based on the following criteria. Now, unless you've got previous web experience, you probably don't know what any of that stuff there in gray is. That's to be expected. So what you can do is you can go out to the URL that's right here, and this is a free product. It's called MobiRise. So you can go out to mobirise.com and you can download this product for Windows. All right. So just to show you, I'll go ahead and click on the link and it comes out to here. It couldn't be much easier because you click the button that says download for Windows. If you're using Chrome like I am, and I've already got it, so I'm not going to do this. Down here, it'll put the executable way down in the left-hand corner. You can right mouse click on it and choose open when done. All right. So what do you get for this? I mean, why am I even mentioning this to you? Well, I want to show you what it looks like. So I'm going to type MobiRise in here because I've already got it. Now my version might be a little older than yours. So yours might look a little different when you bring it up. All right. Over the summer, I taught a class for some junior high kids. These were my students. I literally, and I'm not making this up, I literally built this website for them. All right. I literally built this and it took less than 10 minutes. All right. And you'll notice that if I go to projects up here, well, it's supposed to be jumping around. I guess I've got to actually preview it in the browser. There we go. So if I go to here and I go to projects, you can see it takes me to their projects. If I go to social media, it goes to social media. If I click home, it goes back up to the top of the screen. All right. So what did we get from this? Well, this is what I want to show you right now. Okay. So let me come back here. Okay. And I'm going to just very quickly in front of you. And again, you will get a video on this. So if it doesn't make any sense, don't let it bother you, please. But I'm going to come out here then, and I'm going to click sites right there. And I'm going to click create a new site. This is what you all can do. All right. So it comes in here and it says, well, what theme do you want to use? And you can look in here. Some of these things are free and some of these things cost money. I don't want you to pay a cent for anything. But I'll just look through here and see, Jesus, I mean, when you look, there are literally now, it used to be there were a few themes. Well, look, as you can see now, there's more than a few. All right. So let's see, can I grab, that's a page template. So let's go over to themes here. I'm just going to grab this first one. It says Mobirise 5, just this one. Boom, I'm going to click that. Now it says, what do you want your site to look like? All right. And it's going to actually start to build this for you already. Well, I don't know what I want mine to look like. Let's just grab this one because you're supposed to have a picture of yourself in there. So portfolio, that's what you're creating. So that makes sense. All right. So you get this. And you're like, well, I'm not Jessica Brown, what the heck, and this isn't what I can do. This isn't my, yeah, but look, you've already got all this stuff made. So what do? All right. Well, first thing you can do is you can come click on her picture and notice it says drop an image in here or browse your computer. So I'm going to browse my computer here and I'm going to just come in and let's see. I don't even know if I have any pictures of myself on here, but I know I've got some pictures of my granddaughter. Let's see, do I have my pictures? Let's just grab some picture from here. Of course, I have no pictures. Oh boy. I know where I can grab one. So let me just grab this right here. Why are you not showing me anything? Let's do this. All right, I'm making this much harder than it is. So I'm going to go out to Google Images. So images.google.com. And I think that I've got some images of me out there. I don't know, but I'm going to say Jeff Scott. Well, there's a Jeff Scott who's a coach. So Rankin Technical College. There, that's me. So I'm just going to grab this picture right here. Okay. And I'm going to, let's see, save the image as. I'm going to just throw it out on my desktop. And I'm going to call it me.jpg. Okay, there, that wasn't that hard. All right, now going back into Mobirise then. So I don't want her picture anymore. So I've clicked on there. I'm going to, whoops, that's if I wanted it to change the size. I'm going to browse the computer. There's me. There's my picture. I click OK. That's all there was. All right. So I come in here and I start changing the text. Okay. And I could put other stuff in here. You get the idea. All right. So that's all it is. Now, under the My Jobs, You know, I could put anything I wanted, or I could get rid of the buttons. If I don't want the buttons there, I can just get rid of them. How do I get rid of them? All right. I click over here where it looks, this thing right here, it looks like a little bit of gears. All right. And there's all sorts of stuff. So if I don't want buttons anymore, I can just remove them. Click there and they're gone. If I decide I don't want to use this color, I don't like the red, I can highlight it. Okay, in fact, I can click on any part of it right here, and I can click on this little color thing. And let's say I want it to be blue. All right. And you can see how, hopefully, how fast and how easily you can change this stuff. All right. So again, I will go and from scratch, I will go out and create a website and show you exactly what it looks like. All right. But you have to do that. Now, what you guys have kind of going against you is, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, Grant, you're the only one I could ask on this, but to my knowledge, all of you in this class, this is your first class. Because typically when you start in fall, if you start in the seated classroom, the first class that you take is not this class, it's the one you guys will take next semester. So you're flipping the order. So instead of taking the first class, then the second class, you're taking the second one and then the first. And you might say, well, why is that? Because the decision was made by the people in charge at Rankin, is they wanted to be able to offer both classes in the same semester. All right. So they wanted to be able to offer in the morning both the first class, which is the AWD1000 Web Development Technology, which you guys will take next semester, and the one you're taking now, the AWD1100 C# programming. All right. And there's a lot of political reasons this was done. Nobody explained it to me, but that's just the way that it is. So I'll set this up for you guys. All right. The other thing that you can do with this, and again, you will learn more about it just a little bit, and that is, get that guy out of there. All right, is you can literally take this site after you create it and put it out on GitHub Pages. All right, GitHub Pages is a special part of GitHub. I'll show it to you in another lecture. All right, but just start thinking about how you would like to lay something like this out. That's all I want you to do. All right, so I'll just leave it right there for now. All right, and with that said, then I'm going to jump into this chapter. And what do I mean here? Well, I mean, I want us to start going over right now, chapter 18. All right, now, depending on your point of view, this chapter is going to be either like unbelievably difficult or just different. I'm going to look at it as being different. All right. Now, I'm going to show you something right now that's going to make very little sense to you. Don't worry about it, because we're going to be going over this stuff for the rest of the semester. All right. Now, imagine for just a second, I'm going to make this. Let's say that we had a list of everybody who was at Rankin. We had a list of everybody. And I don't know, there are hundreds of students between there's actually right now, there's 4 campuses and they're building a 5th right now. Let's just say there's 1,000 students between all those campuses. There's probably more, but let's just assume there's thousands of them. And we had a list here, you had John Jones. I'm not going to type out 1,000 of these, Mary or Mark Doe, Mary Green, etc. So you've got all those. And imagine there's 1,000 of them. All right. Just so we got a number we can all think about. And let's say that somebody who's in administration wants to run a report, and they want to see, they've got these 1,000 people and they want to see what programs each one of those people are in. In other words, they want to be able to know how many people are in AWD, which is the program you're in, how many people are in electronics, how many people are in diesel, how many people are in automotive, etc. All right. Well, what you're going to learn starting Wednesday is, if we wanted to do that, all right, is you type in something like this: select star from, let's just say students, all right, And then we're going to say group by program. And that'll give you the name of every student who's in there. All right, but grouping it by program, it'll take all the AWD students and put them together, then all the diesel students and put them together, etc. So why am I even showing you that? Because what you're going to learn in this chapter, you're going to learn kind of a subset of this that's called link. Now, link, in a way, takes this stuff that you're seeing right here, because that's actually a database command, and it sort of turns it on its head. And what I mean by that is we're going to type something that's going to look like this: from students, select star. So it's almost the opposite. All right. And you might say, okay, fine. First of all, why are we even learning this? And we're learning this because what link allows you to do is it allows you to do database-like operations on things that aren't databases. All right. So you could take, if we had those 1,000 people in an array in C#, could we still have gone through there and found out everybody? Yes, but it could have taken quite a bit of code. But writing it with link, it takes very little code. All right. So you're going to start seeing this stuff in here. You're going to see this in this chapter. And then once we get to Wednesday, you're going to be seeing it more like this. All right. I wanted to make sure that you had an introduction to link because I talked to Mr. Gudmested and he said, oh yeah, they always go over link. They spend a class period or so on it. We're going to spend 2. I'm going to talk today about what link is. All right. I've already got a GitHub repo out there that's got a bunch of examples. We're going to go over those. Then again, even though I've shown it to you already, I'm still going to show you the project that we're going to go over tomorrow. All right. So with all that said, let's jump into the chapter. Okay. I don't want to read a bit of this to you. You can see that, as always, the chapter is broken down into about 4 different components. We talk about what you need to understand to be able to use link. Then you're given a bunch of examples of how to use link. All right. Then they go back and they say, hey, to try to make your life a little bit easier, you could use these things called extension methods. And finally, they will give you an example from these products and customer things that we've been working with throughout most of the book. Now, if you look here, one thing to notice, it's not a long chapter. All right. So I don't know how long this is going to take. I don't know if I can finish this. I'm not in a hurry to, but there's a chance I'll finish this by the time we break. And if we don't, we'll do it right after. And then we're going to go over some examples. And again, if it doesn't totally click right away, don't let that bother you, please. All right. So let's start. Let's did this before too. Don't know why. Let me try it again. Oh. You're not going to get this up yet. Let's see. It's not my internet connection. So let me get out of here and get back in again. Hopefully that'll fix it, but we'll see. There we go. All right. So again, it starts with basic concepts for working with LINQ. LINQ stands for Language Integrated Query. All right. And again, what it does is it allows you to run database-like operations on things that aren't databases. All right. That's the best definition I can give you because it's about as simple as possible. And I know there's some words in there we haven't really worked with, and I get it. All right. Okay. So it says here, when you use link, we're going to have to use some of this stuff we talked about earlier. The good news is you don't have to understand what enumerable and queryable are. You don't have to understand those. You're just going to have to put a line of code at the top of the program saying that you want to use that stuff. That's it. All right. So we're going to take a look at some examples in just a second. But first, they talk about why you'd want to do this. All right. And notice it says the biggest advantage is it lets you query different types of data sources using the same language. It goes back to what I already mentioned to you earlier, and that is the fact that you can go and you can use things like a list or like an array, and you can use them as though they're a database table. That's pretty powerful stuff. Because what you're finding today, and I mentioned this to you when we were in the chapter on file IO last week, that the whole idea behind this thing is persistence. We want our data to be able to persist between program runs. So this is something we're doing that's new. All right. It says the key to making this work is that the query language is integrated right into C#. This link is a Microsoft product. It's designed to work with C#, meaning it's designed to work right inside of Visual Studio. The reason that that's important, and you can even see it on here, once we start working with it, it'll even bring up IntelliSense and the like. All right. Plus, what we're going to start doing very soon is we're going to move over to a full database. I'm still not sure if we're going to use SQL Server and MySQL or just MySQL. All right. But you can be assured that a week from today, so next Monday, we're going to start building a database project as a class. I'm going to get you to a certain point in this project. Then I'm going to say, now you take it over. So what you're going to find is probably all next week, I'll be lecturing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. All right. And I don't know how we're going to set this up yet because I'm still in the process of writing this project, but I'll have more on that next week. All right. So let's look at it. And again, it's going to look a little different because it's stuff you haven't seen before. The good news is the 5 things that you see in this table right here: from, where, order by, select, and join. All of those, not only will you be using inside of link, but you'll be using every one of those once we get to where we're working in regular databases. All right. I will tell you that I think at least this chapter, the link, is harder than the database stuff that we'll go into next. I have had several students over the years who, once we start going over the database stuff, have said to me, well, I really like this. You know, I could see myself maybe even trying to get a job in this. And I will tell you, there's a hell of a lot of money to be made if you really know databases. If you are the person in charge of a database for a company, all right, then you typically, your title is a database administrator. And at a company of any size, those people typically make anywhere from 150 to 250,000 a year. All right. In fact, at a big enough company, they won't give all that responsibility to one person. So typically, instead of one database administrator, they'll have a team of administrators. Now, you can read the stuff that's in here, but until you start to see it in action, it's not going to make a lot of sense. All right. The other thing, just so you hear this, is you may have noticed that when I showed you the example, I put things in uppercase, and here they're shown in lowercase. This language, just like the database stuff we'll be working on a little later this week, is case insensitive, which means you can use uppercase, you can use lowercase, or you can use mixed case. The reason I like to use uppercase in my examples is all of the keywords, you know, words that are part of the language itself, I put those in uppercase. so you can start to learn what are the key words in the language. The only other thing I'd say before we look at some examples is once we get into where we're working with regular databases, not linked, but databases, this right here, order by, will become 2 words. With link, it's 1 word, but when you use it with regular databases, it'll be 2 words. All right. And again, I don't want to sit and read to you. You can take a look at the stuff that's in here right now. We are going to be working with link. This chapter is all about link. When we get to chapter 19, it's all about databases, but it's an overview chapter of what databases are about. Then when we get to chapter 20, they show you how you can use link together with databases. All right. So this is all stuff that we'll be covering in the coming weeks, just so you're aware of that. And again, the stuff that's in here, it's not important that you memorize anything that's in here. All right. But again, it says things like an array or an array list or a regular list can be used with link. That's one of the reasons they're so popular. All right. So I've given you this kind of scenario before. It's the first day of class. And let's just pretend I don't do this. Maybe I should, but I don't do this. But I don't turn on the camera. All right. I mean, let's face it, Grant, it would be just me and you right now if we did that. Okay. And I know other people are watching these videos. I can tell you that for a fact. All right. But the point is, okay, that it says here we're going to be presenting the 3 stages of query operations. And if it was the first day of class and I turned on the camera and I asked you all to turn on yours, and I said, let's introduce each other, everybody. So I'd start, etc. We go around the room. All right. And I'd say, what is your name? The next student, what is your name? What does this have to do with anything? What I am doing with that is I am asking you questions. What is your name? How, not how old are you? What is your name? Why did you get into this program, etc. Well, what we're going to be doing is we'll have data files and we're going to be doing similar types of things. But with link, we can do things like what customer is buying the most products from us? What product are we selling the most of? What product are we selling the least of? So hopefully what you see is when you use information like this, the reason it can be so important is virtually any department in a company of any size would be able to use this information. If we're marketing people and we want to find out, for example, hey, do we have any products that sell particularly well around Christmas time and beyond? Well, we may want to push those or order more or whatever, and we can find out that kind of information. If we're doing information on employees, maybe we want to know what employee is selling the most, what employee is selling the least. And the reason you might want to do that is that you might want to have the one that's selling the least tag along with the one who's selling the most to try to get some tips or whatever. All right. So it says here that when query is a question, when you run a query operation, you're asking the data source for information. Sometimes when you ask the data source for information, you'll get back absolutely nothing. That doesn't mean that what you asked was erroneous. That means that what you asked did not meet the criteria. What do I mean by that? Well, I would guess that, with the people who work in administration and the like, that if you said, hey, give me a list of people who work at Rankin who make over $100,000 a year, I would think that our president would be in there, the vice presidents would be in there, etc. But if I changed that and I said, okay, show me a list of all the people working at Rankin who are making $1 million or more a year, I don't think there'd be anybody on the list. So it's not that it's a wrong question. It's just that you asked a question for which there was no data that met the criteria you were looking for. The reason I'm telling you that is what you're going to see eventually is when you start to run these things. All right, so when you start to run these query operations, there may be times when you get no data back. And if you get no data back, it doesn't mean there's an error. It just means that whatever you asked for, there was nothing that met that criteria. So first, it says that you want to get a data source. Now they're going to show an example. We're finally going to look at some code on this in just a minute. We're going to use an array, and it's going to be very simple. It's going to be a simple array that has 5 integers in it, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, so that'll be basically defining our data source. Secondly, we want to define the query. So that is, what do we want to ask of the data source? What data that's in the data source do we want? In this example, we're going to ask for all the even numbers. So when you look at those 5 numbers, you can make your own case as to whether 0 is even, odd, or neither. But all we're going to say is, if you divide the number by 2, is there no remainder? And for 0, and for 2, and for 4, there is no remainder. So those will be the ones that will come back when we run this. All right. Okay. And it talks about a query variable, etc. We're going to look at all of it in just a second, but I wanted to mention the third stage. It's a 3-pronged process. In the third stage, you execute the query. All right. If you don't execute the query right away, I mean, for instance, it probably wouldn't make a lot of sense. All right. For if I wanted to make an announcement to the class, and let's say I had 25 people in the class and we were in a classroom, I wouldn't want to have one person come in, stop and make the announcement to them, another person come in, stop and make the announcement to them. I'd want to wait till everybody was in class. By doing that, you get what's referred here to as deferred execution. On the other hand, if as every student walked in, I said, "Good morning, what's your name? Good morning, what's your name?" And I did that 25 times, that would be immediate execution. So just like, I'm sure you understand the meaning of the words. If execution is deferred, you don't run the query right away. And if execution is immediate, you do run the query right away. So let's take a look at what they're talking about. So again, these are the 3 steps. So when you look here, like I said, this is going to look new. The stuff that's up at the top, those first 3 or 4 lines, what are we doing first? Well, we're creating a brand new integer array, right? And it's called numbers, and it's of size 6, which means there will be the numbers in it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right. So what we do here is we run a for loop, and in that for loop, we're basically filling up the array. So array element 0 is 0, array element 1 is 1, all the way up to array element 5, which is 5. Then the new stuff starts right here. And like I said, this is going to be very, very similar, all right, to what we'll be doing with regular databases. But what you're doing here is you're saying select number. And what's number? Well, it's in here. Number is a variable that you're creating on the fly right here, and you're having it go through the list of numbers. So the first time through there, it takes 0, and it says, if I take 0 and divide it by 2, or modulo it by 2, is the remainder 0? And it is, so it gets added to our list. Then we will do it with 1. It's not, so it doesn't get added. Then we do it with 2. It is, so we add it to the list. Then we do it with 3. It's not, so we don't. Then we do it with 4. It is divisible evenly by 2, so we add it to the list. Then we do 5. It's not, so we skip that one. Then we're done. But then we're supposed to order these in descending order. So instead of being 0, 2, 4, it now becomes 4, 2, 0. And then right here, we're just printing out the information. All right. So again, what's new here? Well, this is all new. This is a variable. Number list is a variable. And when we get done, it's going to hold the values 4, 2, and 0. And you'll notice, because this is the first time we've done this all semester, that when you look on here, it doesn't say int, it says var, meaning it's a variable. Now, could we have put int here? I don't know if that would have worked or not, but what this is going to end up doing for us, what this will end up doing right here, is it says, hey, system, you figure out based on this, what kind of variable or what kind of values number lists can hold. All right, I want to show you one more thing. And again, I'm throwing a bunch of junk at you, and it may make very little sense. I do get that. I just want to show you this. From what we're going to be doing now, starting Wednesday, if I wanted to take what we've got right here. So right now we've got from number in numbers, and we're saying where number modulo 2 equals 0, order by number, and put it in descending order, select number. Okay, so in other words, what I just showed you is I just really typed it in right there. Don't worry about setting it equal to a variable. That's okay. What we will do starting on Wednesday of next week, when we write, or this week, when we rewrite this, we'll say select star from numbers where number modulo 2 equals 0. We're going to be doing something like that. The only reason I'm doing this is not to confuse you, but I want to show you how similar what we're doing here, and that should be a modulo sign, of course, but what we're doing here, how similar this looks right in here to what this looks like in here. All right, so we're learning LINQ for two reasons. One, it's a very good bridge on our way to databases. All right, so that's one thing. The other reason, though, that we're learning it is it can be used with non-database things like arrays. All right, so we come in here, we say string number display, and it's just some string. This is a for each loop. Well, a for each is just a special kind of for loop. All right, and what it's doing in here is it's saying, hey, I want you, for every one of these, basically, I want you to come up here now and call this. All right, so in other words, what they're saying is this. I want you to go through the numbers from 0 to 5. For each number, I want you to look at that number, and if it's evenly divisible by 2, I want you to add it to a list. And if it's not, just skip it. And when you get all done, make sure, as you're doing this, make sure that list is ordered in descending order. Now, if that made even a little sense to you, I'm doing my job. And if it didn't, I would strongly recommend then that you go back and read the chapter. All right. I already mentioned this immediate execution and deferred execution to you, so I'm just going to hold off on talking about that anymore. All right. And like I said, I realize maybe when we look at the example at the end of the chapter, maybe it'll start making a little bit more sense then. All right. And I'm not putting you on the spot, Grant. I mean, it might make sense to you, it might not make sense, but hopefully it's at least you can understand what's happening, and that's for everybody watching this. So here's another example, and you'll notice we've got an array here again, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 different sales totals in it. All right. And so we're going to make a list of sales totals. Okay. And this may not look like a big thing, but right here we're adding them up. So we're adding together 1,286 plus 2,433 plus 2,893 plus 2,094. Later, what you're going to see in here is we're going to start asking questions. Maybe we don't want everything. Maybe we want only the sales that are more than $2,000, for example, which means we would not include this one, but we would include these three. And again, we're looking at an example here, or examples that have very few pieces of data. When you use this out in the real world, so to speak, you're going to be oftentimes working with things that have hundreds or thousands or millions of pieces of data. All right. So all we're saying here, when you look at what's in that mustard yellow, is we want you to select all of those sales. So show us all of them. Then we're going to come and add them all together. All right. Now, why they decided to kind of do it like this right here, I'm not sure, but they went in and brought in a class. So they brought in a class called invoice. You can see the stuff that's in there. All right. And what this is supposed to be is all of these product totals that you see right there. And actually, I guess it'd probably be the invoice total that you see right there. That's supposed to be these up here. So what they're trying to show you in here, and I don't know if they're doing a good job or not, but how you can meld this stuff together and you can use link along with everything that we've learned thus far. All right. So this is kind of important because as it says there, the from clause is your data source. Your data source here is invoice list. That's the list of invoices from right there. All right. So we declare what's called a range variable. This thing that's called invoice is going to iterate or go through everything that's in that invoice list. All right. And we want to be able to basically, again, select that invoice total from them and then add them all together. Okay. And again, I've given this lecture probably a half dozen times at least. And I've never, after I gotten done, I've never had a student come up to me in the classroom at least and say, you know, that totally made sense. I 100% get what you're talking about. I have had several students in the past who have come up to me after class and said, I sort of have an idea what you're talking about. Am I, is that where I should be? And the answer is yes. All right. Now, just like I mentioned to you before, if I go through everybody who works at Rankin and I say, I want to see the salaries of everybody so I can find out the whole Rankin payroll. So if there's, I don't know how many people work for Rankin, it's probably about 300 or 400. So if I want to add all those up, maybe I want the average salary of everybody who works there. That's kind of what we've been doing so far. But if I don't want to do that, if I want to limit, so maybe I only want the average salary of all people who are administrators at Rankin. In other words, non-teachers. All right. Vice presidents, our head of HR, human resources, etc. Then I can run a filter on my query. When you run the filter, you use what's called the where clause. All right. So rather than saying show me everything, you're saying show me everything where a certain criteria is met. So when you look right here, you can see this in the mustard yellow. Where sales greater than 2,000, and I already showed you this earlier. There's our sales, and you'll notice that that's 1286.45. So that one shouldn't be in there. We should have the 2433, the 2893, and the 2094. And you'll notice that we do. They're right here. Now, we did not say to put them in any kind of order. So it just puts them in the order they currently exist in. In other words, they're not in ascending order. They're not in descending order. The point, though, is when you use what's called the where clause, you are limiting the data that comes out because you are putting criteria on the data that comes out. All right. And they pretty much mention that down here too. It allows you to filter criteria. And that criteria will be a Boolean expression. In other words, it's something that is going to either be true or it's going to be false. All right. All right, we talked a little about sorting. When you sort, you've got two choices. Notice right here it says order by sales. When you say order by and give it something and you don't say descending, it automatically sorts in ascending order. So ascending, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Descending 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So if I wanted my sales in descending order, I'd have to go and put the word descending there. Ascending is the default, and you can see this is in ascending order. You can put the word ascending there, but it's redundant to do it. You can do it, just like you can do it in regular database. You can do it, but you don't have to. Some people, for completeness, like to put the word ascending in there, even though it's not mandatory. Everybody's different in the way they do this stuff. All right, so you can order by more than one thing. So here they're ordering it by customer ID. But if two customers have the same invoice total and none of them do here, two of them do, all right? Then if there's a tie, so to speak, so if this was the same, if we had the same, like let's say for customer ID, let's say we had two people with a customer ID of 10. All right, that would be considered like a tie because we have two of them. Then the one that would print first would be the one with the highest invoice total because we're doing it in descending order. All right. So again, when you come in here and you start working with where clauses, what you're saying is, hey, I don't really want every record in here. I only want the records that meet my criteria. Just in the same way, if we were still in a seated classroom and let's say that all of you, let's say there were 1,000 people at Rankin and you all came in one day and, for an orientation or something. And somebody came up, maybe Ms. Bruggeman, who's our site director, and she said, all right, all of you who are AWD students, go with Mr. Scott. All right, that would be like using a where clause because we are limiting what we're looking at. All right, and again, they explain that a little bit down here as well. All right, so far, when we've been looking at things, we've been asking for every field. In other words, give me back every bit of every piece of data there is. You don't always want that. For instance, let's say that we had information about students, and for each student, let's say I had your Rankin ID, your first name, your middle name, your last name, your address, your city, your state, your zip code, your cell phone number, and let's say the program you're registered in. That's 10 pieces of information right there. And there's at least a chance that I wouldn't want all 10 of those. For instance, I probably could care less what your Rankin ID is. Maybe all I want is your first name and your last name and the program you're in. All right, that would make a little bit more sense. So that's what they're going to talk about in here next with using selected fields. All right, so notice here, all right, it says select sales.key. All right, don't worry about key and whatever. Don't worry about that. We're going to talk about it in a second. But the point is, the key is what's here, and that's the value. Key, value, key, value, key, value. All right, so the key that's in here is the person's name. The value is how many sales or how much money in sales that person had. So what we're asking for is a list of names of people in our table who have sales that have been more than $2,000. So you'll notice Thompson should be in here, Menendez should be in here, Wilkinson should be in here, but Anderson should not. And when you look, that's exactly the case. All right. There's just so much to talk about with this stuff. All right. And like I said, maybe the reason I'm giving you that assignment tomorrow, the reason we're going over that project is I do want you to see it, and I want you to write a little of this. So hopefully it'll make some sense to you. My hope is, even if we get through the chapter, and we won't, we're gonna take a break in just a couple minutes, but even if we get through the chapter and we, and you say, why, I understand it, but really not very much, that when we look through that set of examples that I put out on a GitHub repo, when we do that a little later, it'll make a little more sense than it does right now. All right. So it says here, a query that returns anything other than everything you're looking for is called a projection. All right. Not that it's that big a word. No, you don't have to memorize it or anything, but just so you know. All right. This is a good place to stop right here because I want to be able to show you what a join is. So it is 9:02. Let's please take a break. We'll come back at 9:15. All right, it is 9:15. Hopefully you're back. And I wanted to mention something before we go into joins, which is what we're about to do. All right, that let's suppose right here, when you look at, hopefully you see this on the screen, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. It looks like 14 pieces of information if I've counted right. All right. And that's a lot. There could be even more than that. You know, I'm just going to leave it at that. That's just things I got off the top of my head. All right. And when you think about it, all right, really probably this, I wouldn't even include that one here. But the information that you see right here, not the one in blue, but everything else, that's more or less personal information about an employee. That's really not work information. I guess you could say social security number is work information, but you get the idea. On the other hand, when you look over here, so this is personal, but this is work stuff. An employee number, their work phone, their department they work for, their salary, and their supervisor. So quite often what ends up happening is rather than you having these really, really big lists with a lot of different, these are referred to as fields. All right, so here we've got 14 fields, here we've got about 10 fields, and here we've got about 5 fields. All right, but rather as the number of fields that you have in one, you know, regarding one thing gets bigger and bigger and bigger, after an amount of time, you probably don't, this is getting too big. So you start to split it up into a bunch of smaller things. It's very similar to the idea that we've used when we talked about modularization. We didn't want to put all the code that we wanted to have handle when you click the button in the buttons click event. So we started writing and modularizing and writing other routines. It's the same type of an idea here. Now let's just take it a step further. All right. Now these two things, as of right now, these two things right here, the product ID, product name, product description, product price, and order ID, order company, order amount, and total bill. All right. Right now, they have nothing in common with one another. They don't have any field that's in both of these. You'll notice it up here when I broke this into two, I've got employee number here, and I've got employee number here. But as of right now, I don't have a field in common between these two. Now, what I could do is I could come down here and I could add this field in product ID. I could add that field in here. And why might I want to do that? I might want to do that so I can relate these two tables together. So I can grab information from each table and put them in the same query. All right. And you'll notice if you look over here, I now have 3 of these things. Why would I even do that? Well, what if I have in here, literally, what if I have for every product, it's got an ID, it's got a name, it's got a description, it's got a price. Fine. All right. But what if I'm using the same product name hundreds or thousands or millions of times? Do I want to have to put that in there thousands or millions of times? No, I want to put it in there once. So when you start to refer to things, it's kind of like with you and me. Here, technically, supposedly, at least at Rankin, you're known by what? You're known by your Rankin ID. All right. That's, you've all got a Rankin ID. and that's how they refer to you. Do they use that as opposed to a social security number? I don't know. But even if it was a social security number, the bottom line is it's just one field. All right. It's one field that you're using to basically refer to something. Well, what does this have to do with anything? Well, let's suppose I did this. I took these 14 fields here and I broke them up into 2 different collections. Now I want to put those collections together. If I want to put those collections together, they need to have something in common so I can do what's called join those 2 things together. So here we've got an employee number in each one of these, so I can join all this information together based on the common field. Here, if I put that product ID down here, now they have a common field, so I can join that together. The difference between what's here on the bottom example and what's on the top example is this is one-to-one. In other words, this is information about one person, and so is this. That's information about one person, so is this. But I can have different products. This could be the order thing for one customer, but I could have thousands of customers. So I could repeat this thousands of times. So when you are joining things together, you're bringing information from 2 or more, what are referred to as entities, together. All right. So you can grab or extrapolate common information. All right. So I wanted to show you that. I go again, hopefully that helped, not hurt. But when we start looking through here then, and we jump back into our book here. So what they're saying here is when you're joining to get together data, you're grabbing stuff from 2 or more data sources. So you use what's called a join clause. You're going to become very, very familiar with doing joins. You have to just take my word for it. So here we're grabbing information from a customer, a bunch of customers, and we're combining it with information from a bunch of invoices. Why? Because we want to see what customers have what invoices. And you can say, why don't you just put all this stuff together? Why don't you just have one big thing that holds everything? Could you do that? The answer is yes, you could do that, but it would get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. All right. And over time, by breaking it up into smaller units and then joining them together, that actually works faster than putting everything into one big unit and have to sift your way through it. I mean, imagine if you kept doing that, and for each customer, you had everything, all the products they ordered, everybody who works there, etc. You could have one of these entities in here, could have hundreds of fields in it, and it would be very hard to maneuver your way through. So typically, and this is what we're going to be learning about starting Wednesday, you create a database. And a database is going to contain 1 or more tables. Each one of those tables is going to contain 1 or more records. Each one of those records is going to contain 1 or more fields. And each one of those fields is going to contain 1 or more characters. And I went through that quickly, but you're going to see an example of it on Wednesday. All right. The key thing here, as it has been in the chapter, is what you see here in the mustard yellow. And that is you are able to join together information from 2 different pieces of data, all right, to be able to get whatever it is you're looking for, as long as those 2 pieces of data have something in common with one another. So that's exactly what they're saying here. And that's what a join is. So what do we have? Well, this is coming from one of these entities or one of these tables. There's a thing with just customer information in it. This is coming from the other one because it's got just information about invoices. But we're able to combine that information together with a join clause and get for each customer how much their invoice amount was. And you'll notice when you look in here that Sarah Cumberland or Chamberlain has 2 different invoices. So she's had 2 different orders. That's totally fine. but we've got a listing now. One thing, and quite often this kind of stuff using joins like this is used for report writing and the like. All right, because a supervisor will come up and say, hey, I want you to give me a report on for every department in this place. I want to know what their salary is by department, and I want to know the biggest salary and the smallest salary. All right, so you can use something like a join clause to do that. And as it says down here, it lets you combine data together from 2 or more data sources. You're not limited to 2. I mean, I've already done joins with up to 10 different entities at once. It's pretty ugly, but to get the information that you need, you might have to do that. All right, believe it or not, that was the easy part, because what you'll start looking at now, it's not that it's any harder, but they're going to use a different syntax. Why? To introduce this to you, because this is how typically people will write these kinds of queries, because it's just a few less keystrokes. All right. So it says earlier in the chapter, they talked about query operators. Okay. And it says in the topics that follow, you learn how some of these methods work. And the first one are these extension methods. And it says how it's similar to a regular method, except it's defined outside of the data type it's used for. What the heck does that even mean? Well, when you look at the example here, and I don't like their example, but it's fine. So what are they doing here? They're taking a phone number. As you can see down here, the phone number is 559-555-1212. And they're saying, I want you to grab that phone number, and after 3 digits, I want you to put in a separator, and then after 3 more digits, a separator. So here, when they called it, the separator is a period. So your phone number now looks like this. I would have used a hyphen. Hey, I didn't write the book. All right. So it's a method that allows you to extend what you'd be doing otherwise. And as they say down here, an extension method provides for adding additional functionality to whatever it is you're working with. All right. Again, I don't think that's a stellar example they gave. There's nothing wrong with it. All right. But again, it's just, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what it buys you and what they're showing. Now, it used to be, just so you're aware of this, it used to be that years and years ago, like when I was your age, and people were working with databases, all right, that rather than having one field that was called first name and one field that was called last name, which would make sense, they had a single field in there that was just called name. And sometimes people put the first name and then the last name. Sometimes they put the last name and then the first name. Sometimes they use commas. Sometimes they didn't. So you actually could write an extension method if you knew what you were doing that would take and grab a single field like name that I told you and convert it into 2 different fields. All right. And I know people who used to make a living doing things like that. All right. The next thing that's discussed, there's going to be a couple more things discussed in here. Lambda expressions, which we'll talk about for just a few minutes, and then they will give an example. And we will go over the example, but probably not in a lot of depth and breadth of coverage. Because again, there's just so much to talk to you about in this. All right. A lambda is meant to be a shortcut, for lack of better words, and you're going to see it right here. You may or may not have noticed that from before. That's the lambda right there. In fact, what you're going to see next semester is we're going to use that same operator in a very similar way in JavaScript, but we're just going to call it a fat arrow or an arrow operator, because that's kind of what it looks like. It's an equal sign followed directly by a greater than sign. All right. So what we're saying here, let's look at this example that's down here, because this is how it's used. This thing that you see, I'm trying to highlight it, but I guess I can't. But this thing that's in gray, whoops, that's in gray right here. All right. What we're saying is we want you to go through our list of all these totals, and anytime you find a total that's greater than 150, add it to this Then when you've got it all done and you got all the totals, take this and assign it to here. All right. So rather than, it's a little awkward when you first look at it, but what this says is take what's ever to the right of this equal sign and arrow. All right. Take what's in there, and you typically put this in a loop of some kind, but go in there and go through and find everything that meets that condition. Every time you find one that meets the condition, put it into this variable here. All right. And when you get all done, take what you had in there and put it in here. That wasn't the most stellar explanation that you'll ever hear. But as it says, it's an unnamed function that evaluates a single expression and returns a value. Now, if you're listening to this right now, whether you're listening live or on tape, if you're listening to this and you're saying, this stuff is so complex and now we're going to have a program on it tomorrow. Yeah. But what we're doing in the program tomorrow is going to be, by and large, much more simplistic, because when they're just trying to show you everything about LINQ in here, we're just going to be hitting on a few of the major topics in LINQ. All right. Okay. So they're going to talk about these, what are called method-based queries. So let's take a look at some of them. Well, the first thing is, notice in there, it says extension methods used to implement common C# clauses for LINQ. What the heck does that mean? That means that there are C# things that you can use for LINQ, and these will be right here. All of these here are case sensitive. So notice that the where that they were putting in lowercase now has a capital W. The order by now has a capital O, the select a capital S, and the join a capital J. It depends on how you're using these. We are going to do a little bit of work with this tomorrow, but I tried to come up with, for tomorrow, I tried to come up with something that would at least show you this stuff a little bit, but wouldn't be so much that people would say, I have no idea what this is and what it's supposed to be doing, etc. So again, if this is confusing you, what I'm going to ask is that you just give it a chance, read the chapter, and we're going to look at some examples of this in just a few minutes. All right. So they do mention down here again, C# uses what are called extension methods so that you can use some of the stuff that's provided by LINQ. All right. And typically when you do that again, you write lambda expressions. All right. When you do this stuff, as always, there's more than one way of doing the same thing. So what they're attempting to show you in here are two of the ways of doing pretty much the same thing, but using different syntax. And the reason they're showing it to you, I believe, like this, is if you go out in the field, you see both of them. All right. Because there's always more than one way of doing the same thing. All right. There are some other methods that you can use in LINQ. We're going to look at a couple of these in just a bit. The first 5 that you see there, count, average, sum, max, and min. Those first 5 that you see in that list right there, they're known as aggregates or aggregation methods. They return one thing. So if I do a count and I ask at rank and give me a count of the number of people who make over $150,000 a year, and if it comes back with 8, that's the answer. All right. If I say, okay, I've got 50 people who took this test and I want the average, what does it do? Exactly what you think it would do. It adds up the 50 test scores and divides by 50. Sum, we saw an example of that earlier. All right, it just calculates the sum of something. Max gives you the biggest, min gives you the smallest. Now, for average and sum, those two that you see in there, average and sum, you can only use those on numeric fields. It only makes sense. But the count and the max and the min, You can use them on numeric fields. You can also use them on non-numeric fields. So strings and the like. And again, you're going to see some of this stuff in just a bit. Now let's look at the other ones that are in there. First, as it says, if I go in there and I ask, give me the first grade of somebody who got a 60 or above where 60 is passing, then it would just give me that first one. First or default would say, hey, give me the first grade of somebody who, let's say, got a 90 or above. And if nobody got a 90 or above, just give me back not applicable or NA. All right. So the difference between first and first or default is first assumes there'll be something that meets your criteria. First or default says, if there is nothing that meets my criteria, let me put in a default value. All right. Then there's single. All right. And single or default. And you look at those, and well, that's just like first. No, single expects there's only one answer. Only one thing will come back. All right. And in fact, if it returns less than one or more than one, you get an error unless you use the single or default. All right. And then with the single or default, if there is more than one thing that meets your criteria, you get some kind of a default message back. All right. So suppose I was looking for a house. Let's just say I wanted to buy a house and I have $350,000 I can spend on a house. If I say, show me a listing of all the homes that are $350,000 or less, if I use single right there, it's going to show me just the first one that it finds. If I use single or default and there are no houses that are less than or equal to 350,000, it can give me a message back. All right. So hopefully you can kind of extrapolate that. It makes at least a little bit of sense. All right. What if I've got a list of customers and maybe the first 100 I could care less about, or I only want to see, let's say I've got 1,000 customers and I only want to see the last 50 for some reason. All right. I could skip the first 950 of those 1,000. So skip allows you to do that. It just doesn't show you certain results. You can skip some if you want to or need to. All right, take, as it says, gets the specified number of elements from the beginning of the results of a query. These don't make a lot of sense until you actually see them in action. All right, and then to-do list, I'm not even going to get into right now, but they've got some examples in here. These are just extra methods that are provided by Link to try to make it easier for a developer to iterate his or her way through a list of things, only showing what they want to show. So the last thing that's in the chapter here is this customer invoice application. Now, I have it, but I just grabbed it from the same thing that you guys have got. All right, so I've got it in here someplace. So let me bring it up and we'll run it and take a look at what it's all about. Let's see. So this is right out of your textbook. What I'm showing you right now is literally right out of the book. All right, so I'm going to run this one for you. Now, in the last couple chapters, we've used list boxes and we've added things and we've deleted things. This isn't what this one's going to do. So if I run this, hopefully it'll run. I haven't even tried to be honest with you. But otherwise, we'll just look at the results in the book. And it does look like it's going to give me an error. Stream reader. Oh, it's that same path thing that we had the other day. So let's see, could not find this path. See if I can fix it. I don't know if I can or not, but I'm going to try. Right, now we can say path like that. So let's see if that fixed it. File. No, I must not have that file. So I'm going to quickly grab it because I want to show this to you. And I think it makes more sense to look at the actual code itself. So give me just a second here. There. Yeah, see, I don't have a chapter 18.txt in here. That's what it's looking for. So let's see if I can go grab it from the website. There we go. Oh, see there. Let's see if we've got it here. Period. No, of course not. Well, I'm going to just create a file. It's not going to have anything in it, so I don't know what's this is going to do, but all right. It's going to be empty, so I'm not going to be able to show you this, but it's okay. It's another one called places. Let's just go back and look at what's in the book. All right. What happens is we've got two files, a list of customers and a list of invoices. We combine those together and we print out a report like this. So it is using a link to grab the information from the customer file, which is just the customer names that you see there, and we're combining it with information from the invoice text file, which has in it the invoice ID, the invoice date, and the invoice total. And from there, we're able to go in and make pretty much a nice looking output. All right. So again, if a boss came up to us and said, hey, I want a list of all the customers and their invoices, we could give them something like this. Now you'll notice it says here that this form uses a list view to display a list of invoices, and the list is sorted by invoice total by customer name. So the main thing we're doing it on is customer name. Notice it's last name first. But if one customer has two or more different invoices, like Sarah Cumberland, then we're saying we want, since these are the same, we could have done it by invoice ID, but instead we're saying give me their biggest invoice total first, then their next biggest, then their next biggest. So you can see when you look in here, we've only got two customers, Sarah Cumberland and Kathy De La Fuente, who actually have more than one invoice. All right. But what we're able to do here, all right, is we're able to come in and combine the information together and put it into one report. And that's pretty much what they're saying here. So they go through the code, and it's probably at least as complex as anything that we've done, if not more so. I'm not going to run through it with you, all right? Because they only have that and that's it. But I want to do this, all right? This is, okay, let me show you this first of all. Grab this, because you're going to get all these URLs that I'm showing you right now. You will get all of them by the end of the period today, but let's see. Let me go out to where my URL is on my GitHub repo. Well, let me bring it up again then, that's okay. All right, so this is the one, and I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to go over this. Notice I said this is stuff I created a year ago. If there's any errors or anything in here, anything, it's all on me. This is just stuff I did on my own, okay? But what I wanted to show you though is everything I'm about to go over with you, and again, you'll get the URL, but everything I'm about to go over with you is online. So I want to show you this example, and I'll tell you what, it is 9:45, and we may go a little longer, but I'll be done by 10:15 today. All right, so we'll go through some examples because I want you to at least see how this is being used. I'm not saying, hey, you should understand all this, because that would be kind of dumb on my part. But before we go through an example tomorrow, a full-fledged example that we'll build from scratch, I want to show you the type of thing we're going to be looking at. All right, so with that said, let me, here we go. Yeah, so this is the one. You have all this stuff that I'm about to show you. So the examples we go over for the rest of class today, you will have examples of all of those, not this one. Sorry, I brought the wrong one up. So let's see. Well, I'm hoping that isn't the one I sent you, because if it is, then I have to take the assignment away because the assignment's in there. So let's see. Link. Well, let me just go grab it from GitHub and we'll see what's in there. So again, this is the same repo I'm going to ask that you take a look at and download if you want examples of this stuff. So let me just grab this, extract it. I'm just going to call it link JPS. There we go. I was going to say it shouldn't take too long. So there we are. All right. We'll go over most of what's in here. So at least again, you've had a chance to see it. You'll notice that there's 4 different applications in here. Employee link, link with a collection, using something, doing it without link, and then doing it with link. So let's start with that one. So let's go in here. I'm going to close all these. And I'm going to show you how we're going to do something without link. And then we're going to go back and redo the exact same thing with link. So it says here, test score 01 old. All right, so I'm going to bring that up right now. This is a console application, and it's not very different from what we've looked at before. But what we're doing is we're going to come in here and generate 25 random numbers between 0 and 100. They are supposed to be representing test scores. If the test score or the number we generate is 60 or above, the person passed the test. If it's below 60, they failed the test. All right. So hopefully at least what we're doing here makes sense to you what it is. So those are our two constants, the number of test scores and our minimum pass amount. Then we come through here and we're creating an array that's going to hold these 25 members. All right. And you've seen this kind of stuff before. We've done this before. We're going to fill the array with 25 random numbers. Then we're going to display the 25 random numbers in their original order. Then we're going to sort them and we're going to display them in ascending order, 1 to 10. Then we're going to sort them again and display them in descending order. And finally, we're going to find out how many people passed. So when you look at these, most of the stuff in this particular example shouldn't be new to you. All right. There's how you create 25 random numbers right there. Nothing big. So that's going to give us 25 random numbers. This is wrong. It's not between 25 and 100. It's between 0 and 100. So those would represent, like we said, test scores. All right. After we put in those 25 numbers, we just display them. So we're not doing anything special here. We're just displaying them, and they're not in any order. They're just in the same order we generated them. All right. Then we go in and we sort them in ascending order and we print them again. All right. Then we take what we just put in sorted order and we reverse it, which does it in descending order. All right. And then finally, we come in here and we do a little bit of math. We say, go through all 25 scores. If the particular score, if the particular score was greater than or equal to 60, add it to this string that's called passing. So if I grab this one in its current form, and really I'm not being funny or whatever here, this is not a hard program, this one. If I set that as my startup project and I run it, what you'll see here is we've got 25 test scores, and then we sort them in ascending order, and then we sort them in descending order, and then we figure out how many of them are greater than or equal to 60. So we've got 25 in unsorted order, 25 in ascending order, 25 in descending order. All right. And then how many, however many there are, that were greater than or equal to 60. So if I ran this again, now you'll notice I got, instead of 6, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So almost half of the people who took the test here passed. The point, though, is this. In this example, we're using the stuff that we learned in the middle part of the book. Really, the stuff that's in here is almost exclusively from chapter 8 when we talked about arrays. So let's go back in. I'm going to leave that one up, but I'm going to bring up the one with link, and I'm going to set that one as my default project. And we're going to talk about it, but before we do, all right, let's go in. Let's bring up the code, and that was set up as our start project. So let's see what this one looks like. And you'll notice it looks very similar. All right. We've still got 25 tests. We still sort them in ascending order. Then we sort them in descending order. Then we show how many of them passed. Then we do it again in descending order, but those are just the ones who passed in descending order. All right. So what I want to show you and what I want you to hopefully start to understand here is in this particular example, we used link. Could this have been done without link? Well, I just showed you that it could have. But there are times when you want to do very intricate mathematical operations on data that's not in a database, that if you don't use something along the lines of link, that instead of you writing maybe 10 or 20 lines, you might write yourself a few hundred lines. And I'm not exaggerating there. So we stop the run and let's take a look at what's in here. This is all the same. That's the same. That's the same. We're still filling the array, etc. But you notice all I did was change the name here to link, 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 and link. So let's take a look at those. This is exactly the same as what we did before. Exactly the same. This one, well, let's look at what's different in here. This is how we did the last one. The one that you saw previously. That's exact, because that's literally, I copied the code and put it above it. All right. But now let's take a quick look and see how you do it in link. So you'll notice that we're creating one of these query expressions. We're telling it to select each test score, all right, from our test scores array. And then we're just printing it out. Now I wanted to start slow here. That's why you might look at this and say, well, that's just pretty simple. Yeah, it is. So if it makes sense, good. Then you're on your way to understanding how all of this stuff works. All right. And again, virtually everything that you do using a package like link, you can do without link. But as you get to where you're working more and more with more and more complex types of operations, you're going to end up writing more and more code if you don't use something along the lines of link. That's what I'm trying to get across to you here. All right. Then when we do it in ascending order, well, you look at this, var original order equal from TS and test scores, select TS. All right, I'm going to make this smaller and hopefully you can fit them both on the page. It's the same thing, except we added an order by in here. All right, so it's the same thing that we just wrote, but we added an order by. And here we said order by, and again, this is redundant. This will work just fine, even if I remove that word. Just to show you, I removed the word ascending. I'm going to come in here and do a file save all. I'm going to run it again. And you'll notice that putting this in ascending order still works. All right. A lot of times developers like to put that in there, even though it is redundant. So there's no doubt what they're attempting to do. So again, I'm creating one of these query variables. I'm telling it to select each test score in the list, but as it's selecting it, I'm having it order it in ascending order based on that particular test score. Then we do the exact same thing, but instead of the line in blue where we use ascending, now we've got descending. All right. And finally, we've got this thing in here that checks to see whether or not somebody is passed. This is quite a bit smaller than what we did previously in the other one. All right. When we wrote the other one and we checked all that stuff, I think it's here. All right. We had that for loop with an if statement in it. And now we don't have any if statement. We put all of the code that we want to check right into our where statement. Again, we are, for lack of better words, we are starting on a transition where we're going from doing things in a certain way where it's virtually impossible to make it persist to using databases where we will be making things persist. All right. So that's the first and second one, doing it both with link and without link. And again, that did it. And then we said, after you do that, then put it in descending order. That's the last one that printed out. All right. So again, I'm not foolish enough to say to you, hey, Grant, is all this making sense? Hey, James, is all this making sense? Because it may not make a whole heck of a lot of sense right now, which is to be expected. All right, so let's go on and look at a couple more of these. This next one is this employee link. All right, so what is that? Again, these are all all of these are set up as console apps. But when you look in here, now we're bringing in a class. We're saying each employee has 3 pieces of information. They each have a string representing their first name. They each have a string representing their last name. And they each have a decimal value which represents their salary. All right, you've seen this kind of thing many times now before, starting in chapter 12. Then we've got a constructor where we pass stuff in. We've got our getters and setters done the old-fashioned way. All right, so nothing really new in there. And we've got a toString method that we can override. And I also put a list of employees in there then. So you can see there are what, 5, looks like about 10 employees. They each have a first name. They each have a last name. They each have a salary. So these things that are in here are what are making up this and this and this. Did I have to put them inside of the class here? No, but just to show you, you can do that. So let's take a look in here then, all right, at the program file, okay? And you'll notice that a bunch of it is commented out. Well, you can uncomment it if you want to look at everything that's in here. So what I'll do is I'll uncomment this, and I'll uncomment this, and I'll uncomment this, and this, all right, and then I'm going to save it, and I'm going to run it. All right, whoops, and I didn't change my startup projects. Let me do that. There we go. Now we get a lot more output than we did previously. So let me move that so I can make this bigger. Okay, so taking it from the top. These are just the different routines in here. This listed all 10 employees. So for each employee, it gave their first name, their last name, and their salary. All right, I'm not going to go through that anymore. That should make sense. Then next, we wanted only those people making between 50,000 and 75,000. So when you look up here, should have John Jones, should not have Kate Smith, should not have Kent Black, should have Gwen White, should not have Fred Green, should not have Jane Brown, should not have Jeff Creed, should have Gene Jones, and should not have Mark Bryan or Chris Kelly. There should only be 3 of them. There they are. They were all people who met that particular criteria. Then we went through and said, give me all of the employees in alphabetic order based upon their last name. So Black, Brown, Bryan, Creed, Green, etc., as you can see. All right. Then we did it by last name only in descending order. Then we used that count thing that you saw before, and we counted how many employees we have, 10. Then we used the sum extension method that you saw before to get a sum of all 10 salaries, $639,386. Then we divided the $639,386 by 10 to get the average salary, which was 60, which is what you meant, which you can see in there, 10% of that, $63,938.60. Then we went through the list of 10 salaries and just picked out the highest one and the lowest one. And then we found just the first one that was over 75,000 in here. So that was Kate Smith. Let's see if that's correct. No. Yes. She's the first one over 75. If we'd have said the first one over 100, it would have waited because the one that is over 100 is at the bottom. The first salary over 1 million. Notice we put down a message there, none meet criteria. So there was no one, again, there was no one in here that made over 1 million. This is a mistake. That should have said first salary under 75K, not over, but that's fine. All right. And then we skip the first 3 employees in the list. We use that skip extension method. So we should not have John Jones or Kate Smith or Kent Black. We should start with Gwen White when we're doing this. And you'll notice we do. So this was just meant to run through some of the functions that are in here just to show you, all right? And then notice the states in the Midwest list. We'll look at that. So we're going to look at this whole program just from the beginning. Let me stop the run and we'll take a look at it from here. Now, again, when you run yours, if you do, it's not going to look exactly like mine unless you do come in here and uncomment this stuff because I had it all commented out. All right, so let's look first at display all employees. It's right here. Pretty simple. That's just got a regular for each loop in it. All right, could we have done that as a link query? Yes, would have been no problem doing it as a link query. All right, but then we've got the ones where we're actually doing some calculations. So rather than using an if statement, rather than putting this into a for loop and having it go through every employee and saying, if the salary is greater than or equal to 50,000 and it's less than or equal to 75, then add it to a list. We're doing it using link. We're doing the same type of operation, but we're doing it using link as opposed to doing it without link. And I will tell you that by and large, virtually everything we've done this semester where we've been doing numeric type of calculations, especially when we got a list of employees or whatever, we could go back and rewrite all this stuff as link. All right, so let's continue on. So this is the same kind of thing, but we're sorting it by name. So notice in the order by, there are 2 things in there. The first one says order by E dot last name, and then the next one says E dot first name. The first thing to realize there is we don't use the words ascending or descending in there, so by default they will both be ascending. If we have 2 people that have the same last name, then the one that should appear first is the one that's got the shorter, not shorter, but more alphabetic near the top first name. So if we have Mary Jones and Nancy Jones, it should bring Mary up first because M in Mary comes before N in Nancy. All right, so you are starting to see how this stuff can be used. And again, I cannot say this to you too many times. We are transitioning over where we are going to eventually be working on an application. I'll even tell you what it is. All right, that I went and took a course a little earlier this year where the guy did some work on this stuff, and he's a big Beatles guy. I am too, but I didn't want to grab his stuff and I wanted to change it around. So I like all sorts of different kinds of music. And in the last several years, I've gotten at least a little bit into country music. So we're going to be doing an application where we're going to be using a database. It's going to have all sorts of albums and songs and stuff from Garth Brooks. All right. And we will be able to go in there and look at information and query information, etc., using the stuff that's in here. All right. So now we're going into here. We want the last names, but notice we got this word. It says distinct employee last names in descending order. All right. When you use distinct, and we're not really using it in there, but when you use distinct, you don't want repeats to show. So in other words, let's assume that I've got a company that I work for, and we've got 1,000 employees. And for some reason, they want to know what state every employee was born in. All right. But they don't want duplicates. They don't care that we have 30 that were born in Missouri. They just care with somebody there from Missouri. So when you use distinct, it'll throw away any duplicates. So from this company, if we had people in 12 different states, out of the 1,000 people, it would only show the 12 states. It wouldn't show any that that repeat. All right. So as it says, there are additional link methods. This was the big thing to show you. If you want to see more on this, this is some place that you can go out to. It's called csharpexamples.net. These are some of the ones that you can use. So I tried to grab most of the things that you see in here and actually put them into this program so you could see how they were used. All right. I don't think I've got all of them in here, but quite a few of them are. Okay. So there's count, there's sum, etc. We got count, sum, average, max, and min. Maybe I do have them all in here. I don't remember. There's average, there's max, there's min, there's first or default, there's single or default, there's skip, there's take, and there's the to list. So yeah, they are all in there. Now, this was put out there. This was put out there not to confuse you, not to make you an expert, but to give you some examples, so when we start working on this tomorrow, all right, that you will have some kind of an idea what we're doing. So let's take a look at, and I know you've actually seen this one already, but I want to show it to you again. This is actually taken from your homework, if I can find it. Of course, I don't have it out here anymore, so I'm going to go grab it. Okay. These are originally what we were going to give out for homework. I don't want to spend so much time on link that we don't have time to go over our database project. So I grabbed the first one, which is actually the hardest one, this song search. Create a searchable music library. Create a song class that holds a name, it holds an artist, and it holds a genre. Create a list of song objects. Provide a user interface. Use some of the link methods to perform different searches. All right, so again, we'll look at this tomorrow. All right, and what we will look at will be, I think it's this one. I've got some copies of it, and some of them I was playing with it, unfortunately. So some work and some don't work. So that is not it. I think this is the one that works. There were a couple in here. You were also supposed to do an employee one. We could do that one too, but I thought the song one was a little bit more graphical because we put it in there. It's put in there as a GUI project. So tomorrow, I'm just going to start from scratch. This is not a complex interface. You should be able to build that interface yourself, literally in a matter of minutes. We've got a label. We've got a text box. We've got a list box, and we've got 3 buttons. All right. And when you run this, again, just so you see it, I'm going to very quickly, because I want to be done in 3 minutes. So show me every song that's in my song list in ascending order based on the title. And you can see those, there's A, B, C, D, etc. All right. But if I say, show them in ascending order based on artist, well, these are not in any kind of order by artist right now. But you'll notice when I click search, now they are. All right. And then finally, when I go in here and do them in ascending order by genre, you'll notice these are not in order. I mean, all the classic ones together because that's that artist, but they're not in any order. But when I chose genre there, now there's my classic, followed by my country, followed by my pop, etc. And then finally, we'll be able to go in and search for songs by title. All right, so search for songs by title, type in search. I'm going to type in here, the word here, and click OK. And it comes back with Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles. And you'll notice it was case insensitive. I can do a similar type of thing for artist. So again, if I go in here and search, it'll now ask me for an artist. So if I put in here Garth Brooks and click OK, it shows that we've got 2 songs in here by Garth Brooks. And then finally, if I do it by genre, okay, and I search, now if I come in here and I say I want all the country songs, heck, let's do something else. Let's do pop. And I select, there's the pop songs. All right. So I just went and grabbed some. I grabbed some off from online. I grabbed some other ones that I know of, etc. So I put a bunch of those in there. And we are going to go through all that, and we are going to actually write the code. And what you'll notice is when we start going through it, there's a little bit of code, but this is the only file. So again, it's about 250 lines. All right, but what you're going to notice is when we go in here and look, we are going to be using LINQ for what we're doing. All right, so that's what you have to look forward to tomorrow. So I do want to say one last time that, and that is this program that we do tomorrow in class together, I am not going to save it. I am not going to save that out to a repository. If you want examples to help you understand LINQ, you can go out to the repository. And again, I will give you all these links, but it's the repo that I just showed you a few minutes ago. All right. And then finally, and again, I know I've said this already, but I'm saying it again anyway. And that is your homework for chapters 17 and 18. I want you to do the written test for 17, the written test for 18, and this LINQ song list project that we will be working on all period tomorrow. Just like today, if we get this project done and it's only 10 or 10:30, then we're done. It's going to be very, very, very important that by the time we start class on Wednesday, all right, that you have read chapter 19. So you have some kind of an understanding of what databases are and how they're used. So again, we just went over chapter 18. Tomorrow we're going to do that LINQ song project. Again, you must complete that as part of your homework. Wednesday, we're going to cover chapter 19 and start looking at databases. We're going to really do some database stuff on Thursday. There is no class Friday because of Veterans Day. And starting a week from today, we will begin work on our database project. All right. I'm not going to ask Grant if it all made sense, but do you have any questions on anything?
No, not right now.
Okay, sounds good then. All right, I will talk to you tomorrow at 8:05 then. Have a good day. Thanks.
You too. Thanks.
Thank you.